I didn't expect this. Turns out this is the real reason Americans regret moving to Costa Rica. Most Americans don't regret moving to Costa Rica because it's unsafe or too expensive. They regret it because of something they never saw coming. We're diving into why some Americans end up disappointed after chasing a better, freer, happier life in Costa Rica. And it's not just about money, safety, or cost of living, like you'll see on sites like Numbeo, Internations, or Expatistan. Stick around until the end because the real reason catches most people completely off guard. It feels like stepping into a dream, but what happens when the dream becomes your everyday life? When many Americans first imagine moving to Costa Rica, the vision is almost cinematic. Mornings start with the sound of waves brushing the shore, coffee in hand, toes in the sand. The expectation is simple but powerful. Life becomes a permanent vacation. Beach life isn't just a getaway anymore. It's your new normal. There's no rush hour, no gray office walls, no endless deadlines, just sun, ocean, and time. Along with that comes the promise of freedom. Freedom from the grind, from rigid schedules, from the pressure to constantly chase more. People picture themselves living slower, choosing how to spend each day, finally feeling in control of their time. And naturally, wrapped inside all of that is happiness. The belief that a more beautiful place automatically creates a more fulfilling life. At first, it delivers. The sunsets are real. The warmth is real. The slower pace feels like a deep breath you didn't know you needed. But then, something shifts. Because no matter where you go, life doesn't stop being life. The routine quietly returns. You still wake up, make meals, run errands, pay bills, and deal with responsibilities. The beach is still there, but now it's something you plan around your schedule, not your entire day. That sense of endless novelty begins to fade as familiarity sets in. And with that familiarity, something unexpected creeps in. Boredom. Not the loud, obvious kind, but a subtle feeling. The same roads, the same views, the same rhythm day after day. What once felt magical starts to feel normal. And normal isn't what people thought they signed up for when they left everything behind. This is where the illusion starts to crack. Because vacation energy, the excitement, the awe, the sense of escape, doesn't survive real life. It's built on contrast. It exists because it's temporary. When every day looks like a postcard, the postcard stops feeling special. And that's the part no one really talks about. Costa Rica can still be beautiful. It can still be peaceful. But the idea of a permanent vacation, that's the illusion. Stick around. We're just getting started. We'll now see what effect isolation can have on an individual. Paradise gets quiet in a way no one warns you about. At first, the silence feels peaceful. No traffic noise, no constant buzz. Just wind through the trees and distant waves. But over time, that quiet can turn into something heavier. Because while Costa Rica is full of friendly faces, building real, deep friendships, there isn't as easy as people expect. Conversations stay light, connections stay surface level, and the kind of relationships that take years to build back home don't just appear overnight. You meet people, of course, other expats mostly. They share the same excitement, the same stories about why they left, the same search for something better. For a while, it feels like you found your circle, but then slowly that circle starts to shift. Someone leaves after 6 months. Another heads back home after a year. A few move on to a different country chasing the same dream. And just like that, the connections you were starting to rely on disappear. You find yourself starting over again and again, constantly rebuilding, never quite settling. Then there's the language barrier, the part many underestimate. Spanish surrounds you everywhere, in stores, in government offices, in everyday interactions. Even if you learn the basics, there's often a gap between getting by and truly connecting. Jokes don't land the same. Conversations don't flow as easily. There's a layer of distance, that's hard to break through. And over time, that gap can make you feel like you're always slightly on the outside looking in. It's not that people aren't kind, they are. But connection is more than kindness. It's depth, shared understanding, and ease. And without those, even a place filled with beauty can start to feel isolating. Days begin to pass a little differently. You notice how often you're alone with your thoughts, how messages from back home start to matter more, how the idea of community becomes something you miss more than you expected. That's when the realization quietly sets in. You can live in paradise and still feel alone. Keep watching, because you're in for a shock living in Costa Rica. Everything feels perfect until nothing moves at the speed you're used to. At the heart of Costa Rica is a phrase you'll hear everywhere: pura vida. It sounds simple, even beautiful. It means pure life, but it carries something deeper, a mindset of slowing down, letting things unfold, not stressing over what can't be controlled. At first, it feels refreshing, like stepping off a treadmill you didn't realize you were running on. But for many Americans, that mindset eventually turns into a quiet clash. Because back home, speed is normal. Efficiency is expected. You make a call, send an email, follow a process, and things get done. In Costa Rica, things take time, a lot of time. Appointments don't always start when they're supposed to. Paperwork doesn't move in a straight line. Simple tasks can stretch into days, sometimes weeks. And then there's the bureaucracy: getting residency, setting up utilities, handling legal documents. It's rarely quick or straightforward. Offices close early. Requirements change. You might visit the same place multiple times, only to be told you're missing one small document. And no matter how urgent it feels to you, the system doesn't speed up. At first, you try to adapt. You tell yourself to relax, to embrace the culture, to go with the flow. But over time, the delays start to wear on you. The gap between how fast you think things should happen and how slowly they actually move becomes harder to ignore. That's where the frustration builds. It's not just about waiting. It's about feeling like you've lost control over your own plans. Projects stall. Timelines stretch. Things you thought would take a month take 6. And for people used to momentum, that can feel like being stuck. Some adjust. They lean into the slower rhythm and find peace in it. But others hit a breaking point. Because here's the part most people don't realize. The Pura Vida lifestyle isn't just a change of scenery. It's a complete shift in how life operates. And if your expectations don't shift with it, every delay starts to feel personal. Every slowdown feels like resistance. That's when doubt creeps in. And just when you think you can manage it all, there's one mistake that quietly unravels everything. Something so many expats make without realizing it. Wait until you hear the mistake that destroys most long-term plans. At first, it feels like you've escaped the grind, until you realize you've also lost the thing that gave your days direction. For many Americans who move to Costa Rica, remote work becomes the bridge between the old life and the new one. On paper, it sounds perfect. Work from anywhere, set your own schedule, answer emails with a view of palm trees. And in the beginning, it works. There's a sense of control, even excitement, in building a life where your office can be wherever you want it to be. But then the isolation starts to settle in. Remote work already removes the natural rhythm of human interaction. No coworkers stopping by, no casual conversations, no shared momentum. In a new country, that isolation can feel even stronger. You're not just working alone, you're living alone in a system that doesn't naturally pull you into community. Days can pass with minimal real interaction, and slowly that quiet turns into disconnection. Then there's the lack of structure. Back home, your day likely had built-in boundaries. You woke up at a certain time, went somewhere specific, followed a routine whether you liked it or not. In Costa Rica, that structure disappears almost overnight. You tell yourself you'll create your own schedule, But without external pressure, it's easy for lines to blur. Work spills into odd hours or gets delayed entirely. Mornings start later. Focus drifts, and what once felt like freedom begins to feel unanchored. That's when the loss of ambition cycle begins. It doesn't happen all at once. It's subtle. You push a task to tomorrow. You lower a goal. You tell yourself you moved here to relax anyway. And little by little, the drive that once defined your routine starts to fade. Without clear milestones or a sense of progress, it becomes harder to feel accomplished, even if you're technically doing the same work. And the hardest part? It's confusing, because from the outside, everything looks ideal. You're living in a beautiful place, free from the pressures you once complained about, but internally, something feels off. Days blur together, productivity drops, motivation becomes inconsistent. That's when the deeper realization hits. Freedom without structure feels like emptiness after a while. Not because freedom is bad, but because it needs direction to mean something. Without it, even the most beautiful environment can start to feel like a backdrop instead of a life. And for many, that's the moment they begin to question everything. Make sure to watch all the way through. You won't believe what we found to be the hidden cost of Costa Rican comfort. It's ironic. Moving to Costa Rica to simplify your life can quietly make it more expensive. At the beginning, the plan feels clear. Lower costs, slower living, less stress. You imagine trading high rent and constant spending for something lighter, something more intentional. And for a while, that vision holds up. Local food is affordable, nature is free, and life feels less tied to consumption. But then, comfort starts to creep back in. It usually begins with small choices. You miss certain foods, so you look for imported groceries. You want reliable internet, so you upgrade your plan. You choose a place with air conditioning because the heat feels different when it's permanent, not temporary. None of it feels excessive, it just feels like trying to feel normal again. And that's where the shift happens, because normal, in this case, often comes at a premium. Imported goods cost more, housing in expat-friendly areas is priced higher. Services that match US standards, fast, consistent, convenient, aren't always the default, and when they are available, they tend to be expensive. Slowly, without realizing it, your monthly spending begins to climb. This is the hidden side of expat lifestyle inflation. You didn't move to spend more, but you also didn't move to feel uncomfortable every day. So you adjust, you justify upgrades, you create a version of life that blends Costa Rica with the expectations you brought from home. And that blend, while comfortable, often costs more than you planned. It's not just about money, it's about the gap between expectation and reality. Because the more you try to recreate your US lifestyle abroad, the less you benefit from what made the move appealing in the first place. You start relying on the same conveniences, the same habits, the same standards, just in a different location. And maintaining those standards requires effort and often a higher budget. Some people fully adapt. They embrace local living, adjust their expectations, and find balance in a simpler rhythm. But many stay in between, not fully immersed, not fully detached, just constantly trying to recreate a sense of familiarity in a place that operates differently. And that effort, over time, becomes exhausting in its own way. Because the truth is, comfort isn't free. And when you chase the feeling of home in a place that was meant to be something new, you may end up paying for both financially and emotionally without fully enjoying either. You'll want to know what grows over time living in this paradise. Trust me, it doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds so slowly you barely notice it. In the beginning, everything feels right. The first 3 months are often described as the honeymoon phase, and for good reason. Every day feels new. The colors seem brighter. The pace feels refreshing, and even the smallest routines, buying groceries, walking through town, watching the sunset, carry a sense of novelty. You're not just living in Costa Rica, you're experiencing it. And during this phase, it's easy to believe you made the perfect decision. But then, somewhere around month 6, the shift begins. The newness starts to wear off. The places you once explored with excitement become familiar. The small inconveniences you brushed off at the start, delays, miscommunications, unexpected costs, start to stand out more. You begin to notice patterns, not just moments. Life becomes less about discovery and more about maintenance, and that's when reality quietly settles in. This is the stage where expectations start to meet friction. You compare how things work now versus how they used to. You think about what's easier back home, what felt more efficient, more connected, more predictable. It's not that Costa Rica has changed, it's that your perspective has. The lens of excitement fades, and what's left is a clearer, more honest view of daily life. Then comes the 1-year mark. By this point, something deeper happens. Emotional recalibration. You're no longer a newcomer, but you don't fully feel like a local either. You've adapted in some ways, but in others, you still feel out of sync. This is where you start asking bigger questions. Not just, is this working, but is this the life I actually want long term? And those questions don't always come with clear answers, because on the surface, things might still look good. You're living somewhere beautiful. You've built some routines, maybe even some connections. But internally, there's a quiet tension between what you expected and what your life has actually become. That gap between expectation and reality doesn't explode overnight, it grows gradually. A thought here, a doubt there, a moment of comparison, a feeling you can't quite explain. And over time, those small moments start to connect. This is where regret starts, slowly, quietly, not as a sudden decision, but as a feeling that builds in the background until it's impossible to ignore. You're in for a surprise when we reveal the real reason Americans regret moving to Costa Rica. Everyone thinks it's about the place until they realize it was never about the place at all. When Americans talk about regretting their move to Costa Rica, they rarely point to what people expect. It's not money, not safety, not logistics. Those challenges exist, but they're not the real reason. The deeper truth is harder to admit. They expected a completely new life identity, but ended up living their old life in a different place. Because when you strip everything down, most people don't actually change how they live. They just change where they live. The same habits follow them, the same routines, even if slightly reshaped, the same mindset, the way they think about time, success, productivity comes with them. And even deeper than that, the same emotional patterns show up. Stress, restlessness, dissatisfaction. They don't disappear just because the scenery changes. They simply adapt to the new environment. So instead of feeling transformed, many feel confused. They did the big move, they took the risk, they changed countries, and yet something still feels off. That's the part no one prepares for. If you don't change internally, no country will fix how you feel. And this is where everything starts to make sense. Because regret isn't really about Costa Rica. It's about the gap between who you thought you'd become and who you actually are when nothing external is left to blame. But here's the good news. This is preventable. There's a simple framework that separates people who thrive abroad from those who regret it, the no regret approach. First, build structure before freedom. Don't just escape your old routine, replace it with a better one. Set work hours, create goals, design your days with intention. Second, learn the basic language early. Even a small effort in Spanish can reduce isolation massively and open the door to real connection. Third, test the lifestyle before committing. Spend 1 to 3 months living the reality, not the fantasy, because most regret comes from skipping that test phase. They commit to a life they've only experienced as a vacation, and by the time reality sets in, they're already too deep. And that's the final truth. Costa Rica isn't the problem. Expectations are. And once you understand that, everything shifts. You stop chasing the next country, the next escape, the next better life, and you start building a life that actually fits you, wherever you are. Keep watching the videos we've lined up about life in Costa Rica. They'll give you a clearer picture of what living there actually feels like day to day.